All right, welcome to Logs Vlogs. Okay, that's my new tagline. I think I'm going with, or vlogging with log. I don't know about that one, but um, this video is just going to be short and sweet. Our last type of macromolecule that we identify in food chemistry is what we call a carbohydrate. If you think of last unit, we had a whole unit on hydrocarbons. And I know in one of your blocks I had said something about like what's the difference between a carbohydrate and a hydrocarbon. So if you think of last unit, a hydrocarbon has hydrogen and carbon in it. A carbohydrate, just from the name, for sure has carbon in it. That's the carbo part. But then if something is hydrated, what does it have in it? If I'm hydrated, I'm drinking water or moisturized, but it's got water in it. Carbohydrates don't necessarily have like waters sitting around, but in their formula, they have H's and they have O's, and usually they're going to be in the ratio of each other in a 2-to-1 ratio. Not that I need you to sit there and count through the actual molecules that are there, but again, just like fats and just like proteins, these macromolecules primarily have C's, H's, and O's in them. Remember, amino acids and proteins have nitrogen too, so that's one way again to distinguish between an amino acid and protein versus the other two. Fats are those huge, they kind of look like the letter E, those triglycerides, those big long chains that link together. Carbohydrates, I feel like the easiest way to identify them is that most of them have rings. I never really said too much about this last unit. I know some of you emailed me and asked what does cyclo mean? That just means that you have a ringed piece, something that's not in a long chain, but that's kind of closed off and in a ring. And most carbohydrates have ringed shapes to them. But I do also want to point out that they also have like OHs present in them, so they're a type of alcohols, and then there's other ones that we hadn't talked about, aldehydes and like ketone pieces. So if you go on to take organic chem, you'll hear a lot more of these different types of functional groups, but again, most carbohydrates have rings. The term that we use, the actual scientific term, is what's called a saccharide. Saccharide, or some part of that name, I believe, is Latin for like sugar or like sweet. Um, but that's kind of our like fancier term for a carbohydrate. When we say that we have a monosaccharide, that means that we have a structure that has one ring on it. A disaccharide, if you had to guess, has two rings on it, or two small, we'd say two small sugars or two small simple sugars kind of linked together. And a polysaccharide is something that has many linked together. So some examples, I would say like a monosaccharide would be like your blood sugar is glucose. Fruit or vegetable plant sugar is fructose. And when you take those two and you link them together, so you've got a ring of glucose and a ring of fructose, you end up with what's called a disaccharide. And that's an example of your table sugar. Table sugar, I'm going to write, is sucrose. Do you notice any kind of similarity in the names that they have? Yep, they end in ose a lot of the time. So if you look at a label and you see anything that ends in ose, chances are it's going to be some type of sugar, some type of saccharide ringed structure. If you compare these, let's say you had something with fructose in it. So think of like a lot of our pops and a lot of our sweet stuff now in our culture is made with high fructose corn syrup. So picture one ring. And then if you picture something that has a whole lot of rings, here's what starch looks like. Which one would you digest faster? Something with one ring or something with many? The one rings, those smaller sugar molecules, get digested faster than a starch molecule. And so what's kind of interesting is because they digest faster, you burn through that energy so much faster. So if you are about to go and compete, like in a soccer game or something, and you slam a Coca-Cola, that sugar, that energy that you just took in, usually will be burned off fairly quickly, and you'll end up with kind of running out of energy halfway through the game and feeling kind of lethargic and tired. Where I know for a lot of you in your sports and stuff, you do a carb up the day before where you eat a lot of pasta, yeast, starchy material because that molecule takes so much longer to digest. So you get energy from it for longer periods of time. So that's kind of that idea of taking in those bigger molecules will give you more of a prolonged source of energy. But yeah, this is what starch looks like. So if you're eating pasta at all today, your mac and cheese, this is the molecule, the carbohydrate that's in it. Whoa, what happened to this guy? Hey, that's not how you look. Um, Pops usually have fructose in it, which is a monosaccharide. Potatoes, hey, there's your starch. We'd spend more time kind of discussing this. I've thrown up, I didn't throw up, but here's some examples of carbohydrates that are here. I'm going stir crazy. So yeah, again, if you look at a food label, our society, the way that our FDA kind of works, they hide sugar kind of in different forms when you look at it. If you look at here, we've got listed, there's high fructose corn syrup. Maltodextrin is a type of sugar as well, or a type of carbohydrate. Are there any others that are hidden? Yeah, I just think it's kind of interesting. Oh, here they actually just wrote sugar, but they hid it kind of further down the label. So they've got carbohydrates listed in different formats as you go kind of through food labels. But we necessarily as mammals don't need to take this in for any other reason aside from energy. It's our main source of energy. However, for plants, the carbohydrates give us the structure of the plants. That's the rigid molecules. If you think up like celery has a lot of cellulose, and that's what makes it rigid and crunchy. And so if you're eating any type of veggies that are crunchy, it's got a lot of our big polysaccharides that are in it. So you get energy from them for longer periods of time. Chitin is another example. And chitin is the type of carbohydrate that bugs actually make. And this is what like the shells of bugs are made out of. Also high in protein. And so it's interesting. I believe if you go to Whole Foods, you guys, if you're bored, they have cookies made from the shells of cockroaches where they used the chitin as their like flour instead. So they like dried out the cockroaches, and I think crickets are the other one that they use. So just FYI, if you're bored and want to try something new. However, if you're allergic to shellfish, I believe you would also be allergic to that as well. So don't walk around like eating bugs. So the primary reason I just wanted to introduce this as being our third kind of macromolecule is today I'm going to ask you to go and try to identify all the different molecules that we've talked about. Fats, fatty acids, amino acids, proteins, carbohydrates now. And so the assignment that I've got posted today is asking you to identify all of those different pieces. And that's what our quiz will be on, I believe, next week as well. So if you get scared or lost in looking at the worksheet, I'll post a key as well. But go back and watch the videos that are there, and that should help.